Hi, welcome to this Tuesday with Michelle. What's going on, everybody? What's good? What's popping? What's new? I hope you're all doing well wherever you are. Today is episode 3 in our Boundaries and Relationships series. Today, we're going to be talking about emotional boundaries. So, for those of you who missed the first episode, be sure to check it out. That one was an intro to boundaries, what boundaries are, why they're important, how to go about communicating your boundaries. The second episode was about physical boundaries and sexual boundaries. And this episode, like I said, is emotional boundaries. First things first, what are emotional boundaries? Emotional boundaries are boundaries around somebody's feelings, somebody's emotions. And there are kind of two parts to this. There's the part where you're setting your own emotional boundaries, and then there's also the part where you respect somebody else's emotional boundaries. And when we talk about the setting boundaries, that has to do with yourself. So you have to kind of like be introspective and figure out what, if anything, you want to share with somebody, how much emotional information you're capable to receive at a specific point in time, and then also kind of setting limits, right, in terms of how much you will share with certain people if you've received poor responses from them in the past. And then the flip side of it is you being able to respect other people's emotional boundaries. And that has to do with you being able to validate somebody's feelings, and then also you being able to be understanding of somebody's ability to take in emotional information at the time that you're trying to give them that information. So, starting with the part where I was saying like validating someone's feelings. So, let's say you're in a relationship and your partner comes to you and they say, like, this is how I'm feeling, or when you said this to me, this is how it made me feel. Validating someone's emotions, at least in my opinion, is being able to empathize with them and being able to be like, okay, whatever feelings they're feeling are valid and you can't take that away from them, right? So being able to be like, okay, even though I didn't think that what I said should have made this person feel this way, that's out of the question, right? Because they're already feeling this way, we have already arrived at that destination. And this is what we're dealing with now. So validating somebody's emotions would be like, hey, maybe you could say, like, I'm sorry I made you feel this way. And I think there's a difference between saying, I'm sorry I made you feel this way, and I'm sorry I did something, right? And the reason why I'm saying that is because sometimes in a relationship, something can happen where maybe you said something and whatever you said, it wasn't in a disrespectful way. But when you said it, you had certain motives or certain thoughts, but the other person who you said this to received it in a certain way and it offended them or it affected them. And you're not sorry about the content of what you said because you actually meant what you said. But what you are sorry about is the fact that it's made your partner feel some type of way. Maybe it hurt them, right? Or it made them feel sad, or it's made them feel whatever emotion it made them feel. You being able to be like, I'm sorry I made you feel this way, I think is that whole thing of validating someone's emotions. And then the other part of it was, being able to be respectful, right? If somebody tells you that, hey, at this time, I can't take in all this emotional talk right now. I just need a break from talking about this, being able to respect that. And I think the reason why I said on the flip side of the coin is because while you are setting your own boundaries, right, you're setting those boundaries so that people can respect your boundaries. And so it's only right that if somebody has emotional boundaries on their end, you also respect the boundaries that they have. Something I also want to bring up at this point is the whole thing about gaslighting. And for people who don't know what gaslighting is, I found a definition here online. So, gaslighting means you manipulate someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. In the context of emotional boundaries and this conversation that we're having, I see gaslighting as a complete failure at validating somebody's feelings, right? And it's a very toxic thing if that's happening in a relationship. That's something that should not be happening. Because essentially, if I go to my partner and I say, hey, this is how you made me feel, the person should just, at least empathize with me and try to hear me out to see why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling and have the conversation with me. And my partner should not now make me feel like I'm crazy for seeing things. And this happens, like I've heard, like some people tell me like, hey, yeah, I was like being gaslit. Is that the word? I don't know. I was being gaslit, or there was gaslighting happening in their relationship and they essentially had to leave that relationship. So be careful of that, because gaslighting really should not be happening. That's actually a violation of so many boundaries as well. If someone's partner dismisses their feelings or criticizes their feelings, that's a big problem, right? That's a violation of an emotional boundary. Let's say, for example, my boyfriend does something and I'm extremely hurt. I feel extremely hurt by what he did, or I'm extremely sad about what he did. And then I go to him and I'm like, hey, can we talk about this? I'm feeling really hurt because of X, Y, and Z, right? And my boyfriend just says, well, that's your problem, or I don't see why you're feeling that way, or you're too sensitive. Just saying certain things that just say, like, hey, we're not going to talk about this right now. We're not going to talk about this ever. Like, you're crazy. I don't want to talk about it. That's a big problem. That's a violation. Or if someone says, oh, you really just feel this way too often in this relationship. Like, that's a problem that you have. That's also not a very nice thing to do, right? Like, empathize with somebody and hear them out. Another violation is if I go to my boyfriend and I say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And then he asks me, explain to me why it makes sense that this is why you're feeling, right? So pretty much like asking me to give justification and almost stand in court to defend the feelings that I have. That's also a violation. Like in anything, in any relationship, things should always be done in a loving manner. And if somebody is feeling some type of way and you're asking them harshly to defend how they're feeling, then that's not a good thing. If I had a journal or I had a diary where I write like, really personal stuff or emotional things in there. Really, I mean, my journal or like my diary is my business, right? And then my partner comes and opens the journal when I'm not there and like reads through it, reading through my personal information. That is a violation of an emotional boundary as well. So there's just certain things that should be off limits. If I have a diary where I'm writing what I'm feeling or thoughts that I'm having, that should be off bounds to my partner. Something I'll end the episode with is, I'm all for sharing how you're feeling for both the man and for the woman. If there's something that's not going well, or if you're feeling some type of way, talk about it, right? Don't bottle things up. I'm definitely 1000% for it. I think something I will say, instead of saying but, I will say and. I also think that there is a time and a place to speak about certain things. So let's say, for example, my partner does something and I wake up at 8 a.m. in the morning and it's just set in that he did something and I'm furious, right? But I also know that he has a presentation at work that's happening at 9 a.m. and it's a pretty big presentation, right? I personally feel like it's a violation of the other person's emotional boundaries if I was to go ahead and start like bombarding this person with like, multiple long texts of like shouting at them or like multiple calls, like demanding that they pick up when they have such a big thing that's coming up at 9 o'clock. All of that to say, like I said, I'm 1000% for talking about things. But in that case, where this person has a 9 a.m. presentation, I personally feel like it's only right that I wait until this presentation is done. Okay. If it's like at 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock and I know that he's done, then yes, I can press send on the long text or I can hit him up with like the multiple calls if I want to do that. I just think that it has to do with that part where I was saying like being able to be understanding of how much emotional capacity someone has at a specific point in time. And even if things were reversed and I was the one with the presentation and I had done something that hurt my partner and literally they started feeling furious at like 8 a.m., right? I would only hope that this person would wait for my presentation to be done at 10 a.m. It's just a matter of a couple of hours and then we can go at it. So that's what I think. I just think that with all these things as well, I think sometimes it helps to put ourselves in people's shoes and to be like, hey, if this happened to me, how would I feel about it? So yeah, so those were some examples that I had to share when it comes to emotional boundaries and what things could be considered violations of those boundaries. Let me know if you guys have any other additional thoughts or if you have anything that you want to share. I am more than happy to just hear from people. What are some things that you consider violations of emotional boundaries? And what are some emotional boundaries that you have that you want to be transparent about, right? You can always hit me up at Unpacking Love. just so that, I can fill in the gaps in my own knowledge. That's it from me, guys. Thank you so, so much for listening. Look out for the next Boundaries episode, which will be coming out next week. Peace.